Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really trying to cut through the noise, aren't we?
We are.
Trying to find that single essential tool, something that helps balance that fierce ambition most of us feel with, a deeper, more sustainable inner peace. If you're tuning in, I know you. Your definition of success, it involves growth, impact, learning more.
Absolutely.
But let's be honest, I need you to just feel into this for a second. That drive, that real hunger to achieve. It often feels like it comes tied to this feeling of being constantly rushed.
Yeah.
Chasing the next thing, always feeling just a little bit behind.
That exact tension, that constant friction, between wanting to conquer the world, achieve things, and at the same time feeling like you're losing your own internal sovereignty, maybe.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're diving into today.
Oh.
We're looking for that inner anchor, a foundational practice, really, that allows for that high level of external achievement, but without the usual cost, without the burnout, the inner fragmentation.
Right. So let's maybe unpack this with those two scenarios our research threw up, because they just perfectly capture this modern conflict, I think.
They really do.
We all know scenario A, don't we? It's, say, 6:30 a.m. The alarm isn't gentle, it's like an assault, right?
Yes.
And before your thinking brain has even, properly booted up, your hand, just pure habit, reaches for the phone. It's immediate. A jarring neurological jump scare, really.
It is.
Yeah.
And in that split second, your fight or flight system instantly activated. Your whole nervous system just shifts straight into reactivity.
So you're standing headlines, or maybe you're already rehearsing that difficult email you need to send.
Or mentally juggling the 14 things on today's list.
Yeah.
You haven't even physically claimed the day yet, but
No.
your attention, your cognitive resources, your emotional baseline already hijacked.
Gone.
The day is effectively lost before you even get out of bed.
It's like being pulled into a current totally defenseless, and the contrast, scenario B, is so different.
Radically different.
A quiet awakening, no phone first thing. Your attention is deliberately turned inward, maybe just anchored by the slow rhythm of your breath. Maybe for just 3, 4, 5 full cycles. And then you enter the day with intention, reverence, presence, and this feels key, an active sense of choice.
That choice. That's the heart of it. That's the mission statement for this deep dive, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need that practical, repeatable bridge, something that connects that ambitious drive you feel, your desire for impact, for high performance, with the inner alignment and resilience that sustains it over a lifetime.
So it's not about choosing between success and peace.
No, not at all. It's about making peace the very foundation of your success.
Okay, let's start building that bridge then, right at that most vulnerable point, the morning.
Okay, so the foundational insight here, the first big step, is we have to redefine the first act of the day. It's not what you do first, the email, checking metrics.
Right.
It's how you awaken. In this hyper-connected age, we just habitually, almost unconsciously, outsource our very first, most impressionable thoughts.
Outsource them how?
To external stimuli, to the algorithm, the news cycle's urgency, other people's priorities popping up on your screen. We let the world wake us up instead of consciously waking up to ourselves from within.
That feels like a huge, but maybe unseen loss of control. I think, honestly, many of us listening, myself included, we assume grabbing the phone instantly is just efficient,
Yeah.
Getting ahead of the curve.
I know it feels efficient, but that assumption, it's often an illusion rooted in anxiety. And here's where modern neuroscience has really caught up to what ancient wisdom knew all along.
Okay.
Those first 10, maybe 15 minutes after waking, neurologically critical. They set the tone, the whole neurochemical cocktail for your brain for the next 12 hours or so. It establishes the baseline.
Wow, okay. So tell us specifically then, what's happening under the hood when we dive straight into that stress loop? Rehearsing conflicts, worrying about deadlines.
You spike cortisol immediately. Cortisol, that's the body's main stress hormone.
Yeah.
Essential if a lion is chasing you, right? But toxic when it becomes the habitual wake-up call. It floods the system. And it forces your prefrontal cortex, that's the CEO of your brain, responsible for complex decisions, emotional regulation, strategy.
The important stuff.
The really important stuff. It forces it to default to survival mode. Fight or flight. You become reactive, defensive, focused only on short-term crisis management. You've essentially programmed your brain for anxiety for the day.
And the alternative. If we choose calm, if we deliberately turn attention inward.
The change is, well, it's dramatic. You activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Rest and digest. This triggers the release of neurochemicals like dopamine, oxytocin, things that support focus, connection, creativity, a sense of well-being.
So by choosing calm, you're actually programming for clarity.
You are intentionally programming your cognitive resources for clarity and sustained performance, not those stress-fueled erratic bursts. You shift from being regulated by external threats to being regulated by internal intention.
This brings us right back to that core philosophical anchor, doesn't it? That quote from the Buddha that just seems impossibly relevant today. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. The mind is everything. What we think, we become.
And in this context, the morning battlefield context, that quote becomes a radical call to action. If the mind truly is everything, and we just let it be colonized by noise and reactivity in that critical first moment,
Then the quality of our whole being is compromised.
fundamentally compromised.
Yeah.
Our creativity, our kindness, our strategic intelligence, we're letting the world in all its chaotic urgency define our starting point, and therefore our trajectory for the whole day.
So the challenge is reclaiming that mind. Taking back the steering wheel from everything trying to grab our attention. And the sources point to a tool. It's so simple, it feels almost dismissible.
It is. It's the breath, the
Yeah.
tool of radical reclamation, accessible to everyone, anywhere, no cost. And this is crucial. We need to define mindfulness accurately here. It's not just passive relaxation.
Right, not just zoning it.
No. In this context, mindfulness is an act of deliberate sovereignty. It's about choosing what quality of presence you bring into the world. And that first conscious breath of the day. It's the most fundamental, most potent way to make that choice.
Oh, okay, let's go deeper into this tool, the breath.
Mhm.
Because when we hear about deep breathing now, it's usually framed as, a quick fix for stress, feeling overwhelmed. Take 3 deep breaths.
Exactly. And while that's not wrong, it's incomplete. We need to elevate our understanding beyond just stress relief. When you look at the ancient traditions, particularly the Theravada Buddhism and the Pali Canon,
The foundational texts.
right, the Buddha taught Ānāpānasati, which literally means mindfulness of breathing, not as some peripheral health tip. It was presented as a complete progressive path, a path toward liberation, designed to reveal the true nature of reality itself.
Wow. Okay, so what separates that ancient, rigorous approach from our modern, sort of casual, take a deep breath idea? Is it the precision?
It's the absolute precision, yes. It's a method designed to train the mind, to anchor itself in reality, what's actually happening, without judgment, without adding stories. The instruction is famously detailed, almost clinical.
Like what?
Like, when the breath is long, he knows. I breathe in long. When the breath is short, he knows. I breathe in short. The focus is just on the raw sensation. Air passing the nostrils or the rise and fall of the abdomen. Simple, physical, real.
It sounds simple, but I imagine the real difficulty is, the mind, right? It's constantly trying to jump in, judge things, wander off, planning the next meeting, or worrying about yesterday.
That is the core training. You're not trying to change the breath or force it to be deep and slow if it isn't. You're just observing it as it is. And this act, this simple observation, trains the mind to notice without that immediate filter of, I like this craving, or I don't like this aversion.
Which interrupts that autopilot.
Exactly. It interrupts the automatic pilot. If your breath is short because you feel anxious, you just know the breath is short. You don't judge the anxiety, you don't fuel it with stories, you just observe its physical footprint. And that neutral observation, it breaks the habitual chain reaction. Thought leads to emotion, leads to reaction.
So the power isn't really in the breath itself. Maybe it's in the attention that the breath anchors.
That's a great way to put it.
The mind, anchored in the neutral reality of the body, just can't simultaneously run those old scripts about past failures or future catastrophes.
Exactly right. And this practice, Ānāpānasati, when you apply it first thing in the morning, it becomes a radical countermeasure to our modern condition of being perpetually unanchored. It gives you immediate access to the present moment. And the present moment is the only place where intentional action, real choice, and true wisdom can actually originate.
Okay, but here's the rub. Here's the modern seeker's conflict, the thing we have to tackle head on. If I spend 5 minutes just noticing my breath, isn't that 5 minutes I could have spent, analyzing my Q3 metrics, clearing my inbox, getting ahead? That little utilitarian voice whispers, slowing down means losing the race.
I hear that voice. We all do. But the sources offer a really profound counter-argument here. This practice doesn't pull you away from success. It actually prepares you for it. But it does so by subtly redefining what success really means.
How so?
True success isn't just the quantifiable outcome, the revenue number, the promotion, the finished project. It's about who you become while pursuing those goals. Because if you hit the target, but you sacrifice your internal coherence, your health, your relationships in the process, well, that achievement feels hollow, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Been there.
The breath practice ensures you become a better, clearer runner, not just a faster one who collapses at the finish line.
That really shifts the measure of achievement away from just external stuff towards internal state. Integrity, maybe.
Integrity of being, exactly. And let's bring back that anecdote, the example of the high-achieving entrepreneur.
Right, the one who starts her day with this.
Yes, she makes that conscious choice. 5 minutes of Ānāpānasati before touching the phone or laptop. Now, the pressure of running her company doesn't magically vanish. The deadlines are still real, the challenges are still there.
But her relationship to that pressure changes.
Fundamentally altered. When she finally does engage with her inbox, with the demands of the day, she's no longer reacting from that state of neurochemical panic we talked about.
So her leadership feels different. It flows from stability.
It does. Her decisions become rooted in clarity, in analytical rigor, in stability. Not the defensive, short-sighted panic that stress inevitably induces. And her team sees it. They observe a leader who's resilient under pressure, who actually listens instead of interrupting, whose vision isn't constantly clouded by her own personal anxiety. She's not escaping the world. She's engaging with it more effectively on her own terms because she first claimed her internal center. And this idea of claiming your center, it relates directly to another key concept, inner space. Or let's call it capacity. We're so often trying to receive life, all the emails, tasks, ambitions, into a mind that's already completely full, overflowing even.
Which reminds me of that classic Zen story, right? The samurai seeking wisdom from the master.
Call it. It's perfect here.
Well, the master starts pouring tea into the samurai's cup, but he just keeps pouring, even after it's full, and the tea spills everywhere. The samurai, confused, says, "Stop, it's full."
And the master replies,
"Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?"
it's the perfect diagnosis for the modern professional, isn't it?
Yeah.
Our cup is overflowing. We're inundated with metrics, notifications, communication noise, the constant anxiety of optimization. We're so consumed by the doing that our internal capacity for just being, for clarity, reflection, strategic foresight, it gets reduced to almost zero.
So the simple act of conscious breathing, this Ānāpānasati, becomes the deliberate act of emptying the cup, or at least creating some space.
It's creating that internal room, exactly. Not by running away from the world, but by grounding yourself so profoundly in the present moment, in the body, that the external noise loses its power to completely dominate your inner landscape.
It acts as the anchor, connecting body, mind, spirit.
Yes. And crucially, this isn't some practice reserved for a mountaintop retreat. This is meant to be done right there at your desk or on the train. Or, most importantly, in those critical first few minutes of the day before the chaos hits.
Okay, this grounding, this capacity, it leads us towards what the sources call the Dharma paradox, which sounds intriguing. When we talk about spirituality and success, the common assumption is they're kind of opposed.
Completely opposed. In the common view, we assume spirituality means withdrawal, being passive, quietism. But the paradox is this. The more you align yourself with Dharma, with the universal, optimal way things function, the truth of reality, the more highly effective and impactful you actually become in the world of form, in your work, in your life.
How does that work? Why does aligning with universal truth make you better at, say, hitting quarterly targets? Seems like a leap.
It seems like a leap, but think about it this way. You stop fighting reality, which is an enormous drain of energy, right? Trying to force things, resisting what is. Instead, you start to flow with reality, conserving energy, acting with precision.
Okay, I need a bit more on Dharma for the listener who's driven by metrics, by execution. How does that translate?
Okay, in the context of someone highly ambitious, aligning with Dharma means acting with integrity, precision, and efficiency, because you understand the fundamental reality of cause and effect. It means recognizing that those short-term, fear-driven decisions, they often create long-term chaos down the line.
I see.
It means ethical leadership, not just because it feels nice, but because it builds sustainable relationships and robust, resilient business models. It means you stop wasting energy on internal chaos, ego battles, chronic worry, second-guessing, and all that conserved, clean energy flows directly into effective strategic action.
Let's bring back that executive example.
Yeah.
The one who learned the 3 minutes of conscious breathing. She wasn't looking for enlightenment initially, was she?
Not at all. Her primary goal was practical. Mitigate the internal friction that was making her feel overwhelmed and, frankly, less effective at her job. She wanted to hit her targets better.
So by committing just 3 minutes before opening the laptop.
She created that essential space, that sacred pause we talked about. That brief reorientation allowed her to implicitly ask herself, okay, am I about to lead this day from a place of fear, defensiveness, and reactivity? Or am I going to lead from clarity and strategic intention?
And the change wasn't just internal, her team noticed it.
Yes. The ripple effect was organizational. Her team reported that her decisions felt sharper, more considered, more compassionate even, less volatile. She apparently stopped interrupting people so much in meetings.
Which means she was actually listening.
Able to listen, absorb information fully, integrate different perspectives, which naturally leads to better strategy. And the source explicitly connects this shift, this inner recalibration, to actual revenue growth. They called it applied Dharma.
Wow.
She moved from just managing burnout to leading from a stable, non-defensive core. Which proves, I think, that this inner alignment stuff, it's not a soft skill, it's the ultimate high-performance necessity.
Okay, we've established that this practice, this breathing, creates a space, but let's drill down a bit more into the precise mechanism. How does observing the breath actually create that space? The ancient texts talk about the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the Ānāpānasati Sutta. That sounds important.
It is foundational. The 4 foundations, mindfulness of the body, feelings, mind, or thoughts, and mental objects or phenomena, they basically map the entire architecture of our subjective experience.
You okay?
The breath is the easiest, most tangible access point. It belongs to the first foundation, the body. But here's the key. Once you reliably anchor your attention in the body, in the breath, you start to naturally observe the other foundations arising.
How does that work? If I'm just noticing the neutral sensation of air,
Yeah.
how does that connect to feelings or thoughts?
Well, because you're anchored in the present moment physicality of the breath, you immediately notice when something else pulls your attention. For example, you notice a knot of tension suddenly appearing in your stomach. That's the second foundation, feeling. Then, because you're observing neutrally, you might trace that feeling back to the thought that just flashed through your mind. Oh no, I forgot to submit that report. That's the third foundation, mind, or thought.
Right.
And that thought, fueled by anxiety, might then generate a whole narrative, a story. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm failing at this job. That's the fourth foundation. Mental objects, or the content the mind produces.
And without the breath as an anchor, that whole cascade, the knot, the thought, the story of failure, it happened almost instantly, right? And I'm just hijacked by it. I react defensively, or maybe I just shut down.
Precisely. Hijacked is the perfect word. But the observation, anchored in the breath, creates a tiny gap, a pause, what we're calling the sacred pause. It happens between the stimulus, the thought, the deadline, the feeling, and your habitual automated response.
And in that pause?
In that moment of observation, you see the mechanism unfolding without automatically becoming its slave. You realize, that is just the thought arising. That is just a feeling passing through. I don't actually have to obey it. I don't have to react.
And that's where the freedom lies, that gap, that pause. The sources connect this ancient idea directly to modern psychological terms, don't they?
Yes, it's fascinating. There are essentially 2 different language systems describing the same core neurological reality. Modern psychology calls this response flexibility. It's the capacity to choose your course of action rather than being impulsively driven by habit or emotion.
And Buddhism?
Buddhism calls this ultimate stability upekkha, often translated as equanimity. But both traditions fundamentally agree. The ability to insert that moment of non-reaction, that conscious choice point, that's the core of sophisticated emotional intelligence. It's the bedrock of resilience.
Let's ground this back in the hard science again, specifically for the morning routine. Why is making that pause first thing so neurologically crucial?
It links back directly to the brain state when you first wake up. Remember the prefrontal cortex, your center for rational thought, planning, self-control. It's actually the last area of the brain to fully come online after sleep.
Right, it's still booting up.
Exactly. So if the very first input it receives is stress anxiety-inducing news headlines, urgent emails, jarring noises, you're essentially fire hosing the amygdala, the brain's fear center, before the rational prefrontal cortex has a chance to get its bearings and regulate the system. You're basically loading the survival operating system first.
So we're literally overriding our own capacity for higher level thinking by checking the phone before our rational mind is even ready to handle it.
You are absolutely short-circuiting your best self.
Yeah.
But if you begin with the breath instead, you send a signal of safety directly to the body, primarily via the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve that connects the gut, heart, and brain.
It's the main communication highway. And conscious, deep, slow breathing, especially focusing on a slightly longer exhale, is the quickest, most direct way to calm the amygdala and activate the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. This intentional calming allows the prefrontal cortex to boot up optimally, ready for creativity, connection, complex problem-solving, long-term strategic thought.
Which explains why elite performance groups rely so heavily on these techniques. It's not some fuzzy spiritual add-on, it's necessary mental calibration.
It is fundamental calibration. You see Navy SEALs using techniques like box breathing to maintain physiological calm and cognitive clarity under unbelievable stress. You hear about CEOs integrating serious morning meditation practices, not just for wellness, but for better decision-making. The link is direct. Your mind is your ultimate high-performance tool, and focused breath is the precision mechanism for calibrating that tool for optimal output.
But we need to keep that nuance right. The Buddhist perspective isn't just about doing better.
Crucially, no. It's about being whole while you do it, ensuring that performance is sustainable, integrated, and doesn't come at the cost of your humanity. And that focus on wholeness brings us to maybe the most vital warning sign in our sources, the profound hidden cost of chasing achievement while ignoring that inner alignment piece. The diagnosis is pretty stark. Success without spirituality, without that inner grounding, is often described as a slow fall.
That phrase, a slow fall, it really speaks to that experience of burnout, doesn't it? Or that feeling of hollowness. Even after you hit major milestones, you get the promotion, you close the deal, but the fulfillment is fleeting. It leaves you feeling maybe even emptier than before.
Exactly. The source identifies this internal suffering as arising fundamentally from misalignment.
Misalignment between
the external striving and the internal state. It's the fundamental error of chasing external validation, accumulation, approval, while completely neglecting the cultivation of inner wholeness, inner resilience, inner peace. You're essentially trying to build this impressive structure, your career, your business, your identity, on the constantly shifting sands of external metrics and other people's opinions.
And the illusion is that the next achievement will bring the peace.
That's the core illusion of purely secular success. It promises fulfillment through accumulation, the next win, the next title, the next zero in the bank account. But that accumulation often just delivers more complexity, more pressure, and ultimately just distraction from the underlying fear or sense of lack that was driving the chase in the first place.
So if the peace isn't found before the achievement itself really has no power to deliver it. Is that fair?
That's precisely the insight. And the source uses a brilliant, incredibly simple metaphor to diagnose this chronic misalignment. It calls it the half-breath problem.
The half-breath problem. Okay, what's that?
It points to the profound imbalance in how we live and work, particularly in modern achievement culture.
An imbalance between receiving and letting go.
Exactly. We live in a culture that fanatically, almost obsessively, glorifies the inhale, the doing, the pushing, the acquiring, the accumulating, the achieving. We praise the hustler, the grinder, the relentless go-getter, maximum inhale.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
But we almost completely neglect or even pathologize the exhale, the releasing, the trusting, the surrendering control, the just being.
And without that conscious exhale, that constant forced inhale just becomes, well, it becomes chronic suffocation, doesn't it? That feels like the physiological and emotional definition of burnout.
It is chronic suffocation on every single level.
Yeah.
You're constantly trying to receive more life, the next project, the next metric, the next ambition, without ever fully releasing the anxiety over the previous one or letting go of the desperate need to control the outcome of the current one.
So the conscious breath becomes the teacher.
The ultimate teacher of the full necessary cycle, receiving life fully, the inhale, and then consciously, deliberately releasing the need to clutch and control the results, the exhale.
That rhythm, receiving and releasing, it mirrors that profound Buddhist concept you mentioned, Ānāpānasati, non-attachment.
Yes, and non-attachment is so vital for ambitious people because it's so easily misunderstood. It does not mean apathy or indifference or not caring about results.
What does it mean then in this context?
Ānāpāna means engaging fully, passionately, even fiercely in the world, while simultaneously holding the outcomes lightly. You can work diligently, strategically, with total commitment towards hitting that Q3 target. But you don't allow the fear of missing that target to compromise your integrity, dictate desperate, short-sighted decisions, or destroy your inner peace along the way.
So counterintuitively, if I stop clinging so tightly to the outcome, if I'm less attached, I actually become a more focused, more effective actor in pursuit of that outcome.
You become vastly more effective because true effectiveness, sustainable effectiveness, arises from inner alignment, not from external pressure or fear. When your core motivation shifts away from avoiding failure or desperately seeking approval and towards simply executing with clarity, presence, and excellence,
Yeah.
your energy flows cleanly. It's not dissipated by inner conflict.
And that gives you power.
It gives you immense power. The power to say no with grace to things that drain you or pull you off a course, which in turn allows you to say yes with full power and intentionality to your genuine priorities.
Yeah.
You move from acting desperately, reactively, to acting deliberately, strategically.
The difference between the leader acting from that clear, aligned place versus the leader acting out of constant anxiety. It must be night and day.
It's the difference between skillfully navigating the ship and just being tossed around helplessly by the storm. Think about the gardener analogy sometimes used. One gardener is obsessed with charts, yanks aggressively at weeds, tries to force growth with chemicals. The other waters gently, observes the soil conditions, respects the seasons, trusts the natural process, and nurtures growth.
Right.
Real growth, whether it's a plant, a business, or your own potential, cannot ultimately be forced. It has to be nurtured from a place of attention, wisdom, and trust. Your mind is the garden, and that conscious breath you take first thing in the morning, that's the first essential act of nurturing stewardship each day.
Okay, so this whole deep dive feels like it's establishing a fundamentally new measure for achievement. It's not just about the outcomes anymore, the external stuff. It's measured in, what did you call it? Integrity of being.
Integrity of being, yes.
Yeah.
It's that quiet internal confidence that comes when you know your intrinsic worth isn't actually tethered to your latest performance metrics or your job title. It's stable, it's internal.
And that confidence, that inner stability, allows for what the sources are calling wise engagement with the world, which sounds like the successful application of that middle way concept.
Exactly. It's not about renouncing the world and heading for a cave, nor is it about reckless, soul-destroying pursuit of more. It's the sophisticated path, pursuing ambitious goals, making an impact, but without sacrificing your soul, your health, your relationships in the process. You shift from being just a reactive manager of metrics to becoming an intentional, fully present leader of your life and work.
And this intentionality, this presence, it allows for a kind of internal alchemy, doesn't it? Turning the ordinary into something sacred, just through awareness. You mentioned historical figures.
Absolutely. The great figures who really shifted the world often had this deep inner dimension. Think about Steve Jobs and his dedicated Zen practice, or Florence Nightingale writing about finding the voice of God in the silence amidst the chaos of war hospitals, or Einstein speaking of a cosmic religious feeling driving his scientific quest.
They didn't reject the material world.
No, not at all. They didn't reject technology or medicine or physics. They infused the material world with profound meaning and insight, drawn from a continuous, deep inner awareness. They bridged the inner and outer.
Which means, theoretically, even the most mundane parts of my day, that first cup of coffee, analyzing a spreadsheet, even the crowded commute, they could all be transformed into a kind of meditation, simply by bringing awareness to them.
Awareness is the transformer. And the breath is the gateway to that awareness. And that awareness, that transformation, begins with that first, most fundamental act.
Yeah.
An act of sovereignty, an act of quiet rebellion.
The revolutionary act. Taking just 3 conscious breaths before checking the phone. It sounds so small, but in a culture screaming for our instant fragmented attention 2004/7, that tiny pause feels monumental. It really is a quiet personal rebellion against the whole cult of burnout and constant reactivity.
It is a profound act of self-reclamation. And the ripple effects of that quiet rebellion, they're often vastly underestimated. Our sources really challenge us here to expand our perspective beyond just our own individual nervous system.
How so? What's the broader implication?
Well, it asks provocative questions, like what if calming your own nervous system consistently, subtly contributes to calming the collective one around you, your family, your team? What if your conscious choice to respond with presence instead of panic actually models a new, more sustainable, more effective way of being for the people you influence, proving that high performance doesn't actually require chronic stress and suffering?
What if your soft awakening each morning becomes a quiet, contagious rebellion against the sheer exhaustion and burnout that defines so much of modern life?
Exactly. The sources seem to conclude that the deepest, most lasting revolutions don't always start with loud protests in the streets. Sometimes they begin in the quiet stillness of your own room, in that single, deliberate, conscious breath, in the choice to meet the day not as a battlefield you have to conquer, but as a sanctuary you must protect and cultivate.
And when that realization truly lands, when it's fully integrated, success and spirituality stop feeling like opposing forces you have to choose between.
They're recognized for what they always were, the two essential wings of the same bird, both necessary for sustainable, meaningful flight.
And with both wings aligned and strong, you can finally fly without constantly burning out. Hashtag tag tag outro outro.
So we started this deep dive by acknowledging that ambitious drive that likely defines you listening right now. And that constant friction it often creates when it's fueled primarily by reactivity and fear.
Yeah, and we've really dug into the practical architecture of building that inner anchor using the breath, Ānāpānasati, not just as some quick relaxation hack, but as a really precise neurological and philosophical method, a way to train the mind, enhance that response flexibility, and ultimately define success through integrity of being.
And we learned that crucial lesson about honoring the full cycle, didn't we? The inhale of receiving life, of striving, but also that profound, absolutely essential exhale of releasing control, of trusting the process.
The biggest takeaway for me, I think, is that operational realization. True effectiveness, genuine high performance, it seems to flow much more naturally from inner alignment. It actually reduces the friction, the energy drain of internal chaos.
Which means that the quietest, simplest practice, that conscious breath, might hold the greatest revolutionary potential of all.
So we want to leave you with that ultimate question posed by our sources. It's a challenge, really. It's something that invites some profound internal exploration.
Who would you be if you stopped spending all your energy proving your worth and simply started living it?
The answer, as we've discovered, isn't really spoken, it's breathed. We hope you explore that, and we look forward to meeting you here again next time on The Deep Dive.